Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited for our episode today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Abraham Lincoln, our guest today, is a man of the people in a very short, what seems like extremely short period of time in the grand scheme of who we've had on the show. Our guest has risen to the top of leadership in an industry that we love here in the Culture Matters podcast. And I'm excited to have them on the growing Mount Rushmore of influential people in this industry. They started their business a bit over a decade ago, but like I said, have risen the ranks, and their energy and intensity is very impressive. I remember watching them on a stage recently, and just the level of raw honesty, clarity, storytelling was like blown away. I had to have them on the Culture Matters podcast. You're gonna love them. President of Next Door Lending, Chairman, CEO of the Association of Independent Mortgage Experts, AIM. I could say a lot more, but we better just do the dang podcast. Jonathon Haddad is here. Thank you for coming on the show, my friend.
You're such a legend, man. I've heard nothing but great things about you. Everybody says you are the behind the scenes silent assassin, just when it comes to everything philosophy. And it's been really cool just even having the chance to talk to you. And I can tell from the second I talked to you, so many people absolutely love you, man. So I appreciate you even giving me a chance to talk to me and pour into me a little bit. And thank you for all the books and all the suggestions you're giving me. It's definitely keep my mind going, man. I really appreciate you.
Well, likewise, so are you 21 or 22 when you get in this industry now we're like 45 days apart. So there's another level of like spiritual alignment here.
Yes, sir.
But like, yeah, you're 21, 22 when you got involved in the mortgage industry.
Yep. So
Is
I
that
was I was 21 years old when I started. So I was a bartender. Quick background story. So family, like many others, right, had to help, had to figure things out. Dropped out of college, started bartending, and was fun. I was a bartender, young guy, having a lot of fun, making sure I was just going out. And I won't go into too much detail about that. But one day, a guy,
different podcast?
yeah, different podcast. Yeah, wrong podcast for that. But this guy comes into my bar one day, and I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I loved it. I still remember his order to this day. But he walked in, he was dressed to the nines, and in the area I worked at in Buffalo Wild Wings, you just didn't get a lot of people that were dressed the way he was. He got the Rolex on, the Burberry scarf, the Ferragamo shoes, the Ferragamo belt that matches, and I'm a 20-year-old kid at the time, almost 21. And of course, that's what was interesting to me. And so I'm watching him and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's dressed real nice. So I took great care of him, still remember his order, knocked it out of the park. I was super busy and he loved the way I handled his service. And so at the end of it, he looks at me, he goes, hey man, how much money do you make? I said, that's a weird question to ask. And he says it again. He goes, I mean, just tell me how much you make. So I tell him, he said, do you want to make triple? I
Wow.
looked at him in silence, like as a joke. I was like, who do I got to kill to do that? He starts laughing. So it's like, I do mortgages. Here's my card. Just come check it out. Gives me his business card. Anyway, I'm always been somewhat of at that time, I was starting to, kind of fall away from my being a believer, unfortunately, just a bad path for me, just shame on me. But I think that's part of life and the journey. And thank God I've been able to circle my way back. But I never really believed in coincidences. So I took him up on it. I went downtown Detroit and he showed me around the place. They loved me when I got down there. Lots of colors, all the things that you could possibly want as a 20-year-old. And it happened to be Quicken Loans, which is now Rocket Mortgage. So I just took the job. I went home. And before I took it, I was supposed to go back to college. And I asked my grandma, I said, hey, listen, what do I do? And my grandmother said, she said, look, college is always going to be there. God put this in front of you. You got to try it. So I tried it and I exploded. My first full month, I did 40 loans in my first month at 21 years old. On my 22nd birthday, I literally received a check for $22,000 and I started crying. I thought they were going to take it from me. I didn't know what that was. And the rest is history. I just haven't looked back 11 years later.
What were you studying
When I was getting to
college?
school, I wanted to be an attorney. I was studying political science, but I went for a year and a half, and then I dropped out to help my family. And then I had signed back up for classes about 2 years later, And that's when the opportunity popped up. So I canceled, I dropped out and just canceled completely and just went all in on this.
Yeah, and that's why we get along. I always get along with poli-sci majors.
Yeah.
What type of serious, it's culture. What type of lawyer did you
I
do?
wanted to do business law at the time.
So you get that first check, you having helped 40 people with their home ownership.
Yeah.
What were you thinking the next day, one or the next week once it simmered, it settled in?
So yeah, so I was on the refi side. So it was just refinances early on in
Understood.
my career, got into purchases later. So the first thing I did is I sat at my desk and cried. I'm not kidding. I just looked at it. I couldn't believe it. I had a credit card that my grandmother let me co-sign on with her, and I owed her like $5,000. So first thing I did is I paid off that, and then I gave a lot of the money to my mom and dad, the rest of it. Um,
Wow.
and that's kind of how it all started. And then from there, started doing a lot of stupid things because money gets to your head when you don't know how to manage it. And that's why it's so important for me now. And there's a whole story. I'm sure we'll get into it as we go along that path. But
Wow.
it was a surreal experience that I will never forget. And when you've never made money like that before, when you make it once, my mentor used to say, give others permission to smile. So what he means by that is, hey, look, I now have the permission. My job is now to give somebody else permission that never thought they could make that kind of money. And so I was granted that permission at a young age, and I wish I understood it faster. And that would have allowed me to even help more people along the way. But that was the whole thing. And it was just a surreal experience. And I remember where I was sitting. I remember what I was wearing. I remember everything about that day.
Whoa. For those that are not, because we have listeners in all sorts of industries interested in entrepreneurship and life, those not familiar with refinance, what does that mean?
Yeah. So a refinance is basically you purchase a home already. So you're already into a home that you own. And then what happens is you have the ability to take the original loan that you had and you can move it into a new loan with a refinance. And you could do one of three things. Number one, you have the ability to lower your payment if you had a higher interest rate when you bought the home. Number two, you may be looking to pay the home off faster, so you take a shorter term. Most people take a 30-year fixed mortgage. Sometimes they'll take a 15-year fixed, and it generally comes with lower interest rates. Or number three, if your home has appreciated in value, which means you now have equity in the home, people on occasions will take that cash out of their home for things like repairs, upgrades, and or investments of some kind. So those are the things that you can operate with a refinance.
What are some of the biases or misnomers that the average person that has a home thinks of when they think of refinance, like the misnomers that you have to educate them on?
The biggest thing up front is when clients say to me, savings aren't enough, for example. People don't understand the power of paying additional principal on a home. And so for consumers, even if they're saving, $150, sometimes they'll tell you, oh, that's not really enough. But they don't understand that if they take that 150 and apply it towards their mortgage
Hmm.
or apply it towards an IRA or a Roth or whatever it is, a SEP, depending on how you're structured, that money can allow you to make more money. And I think the biggest thing is people don't realize that you have the ability to have your home work for you. You don't have to work for your home. And the
Hmm.
faster people can pick up on that, you would be surprised how quickly you can get to financial freedom. Because what I tell people is if you're buying at home at 40 and you do a 30-year fixed, you don't want to be 70 years old when you pay this house off. So, how can we walk you through that process and help keep you disciplined so we can help get you to financial freedom? And that's always the conversations I'm having with clients. And I go into a lot of detail, and you get some pushback a lot because people don't want to hear it. People are afraid of that future. They're not thinking about 30 years from
Really?
now. It's our job to teach them that.
Do you consider yourself an advisor?
I mean, we can't technically say that, but I mean, of course I do.
The
I
spirit
really
of it?
do because I've been doing this for over a decade and I've bought and sold so many homes myself. And I've taken advantage of all the things I tell clients, like even adjustable rate mortgages. I have an adjustable rate on my house right now that I'm sitting in. So people can't argue with me on that stuff. I did a 15-year on my first house. You can't tell me that it doesn't make sense. I know all the ins and outs because I've done every loan and I
Hmm.
have an arm right now. So that's a big thing for me.
What is an arm for those that think it's an appendage?
Yeah. You're the
Yeah,
man.
we have a lot of non-mortgage, right?
No,
That
that's
need to
fair.
know this stuff too.
I'll make
Yeah,
sure I go
we'll
through and
circle
explain
the
everything in
banner.
detail, full circle. So an ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. The United States is one of the only countries that generally does fixed rate mortgages. Almost every other country in the world does adjustable rate mortgages. And here in the United States, what that means is you can pick a fixed period of time that's amortized still over 30 years, but you can pick 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years of a fixed rate. And then after that, the home would adjust into wherever the market might be at that point in time. The biggest difference is when it does adjust, your payment is now readjusting based off of the new balance on your home. So, for example, if you did a 30-year fixed on a $100,000 loan, your payment's always going to be the same for 30 years through. The only difference is what you pay towards your principal and interest changes over that 30 years. On an adjustable rate on my house, it's 7 years. So for the first 7 years, my payment is fixed. But at year 7, on that same $100,000 loan, let's just say I now owe $70,000. My loan now re-amortizes over 23 years,
Hmm.
but at the new principal balance. And so that's what an adjustable rate mortgage is. And there's a lot of benefits to it as
Wow.
long as you understand how to leverage it into your favor.
Wow. Those early years, what would you say some of the biggest lessons as a business person in their mid-20s starting to succeed? Because a lot of our listeners are trying to either get in that position or are in that position now, and they may be getting all this different information of how they should be going about building their success.
The first thing I'll tell you is this, my family, I love my mom and dad so much, but their upbringings were very difficult, much more difficult than mine. They definitely helped and did the best they absolutely could. And I love them for that every day. But, my family, my dad's a college dropout that moved to this country when he was 18 years old. My grandfather, his dad, gave him all the money he had and said, go to America and figure it out. My mom dropped out of high school. My grandmother, she dropped out in the fourth grade, was orphaned back home in Palestine,
Wow.
and they were so poor growing up. And so, managing money was an absolute thing that I wish I would have gotten in front of right away, because you're making that money and I never made it before. And so, you start getting into things that you shouldn't get into. And that's exactly what I did, right? Just you're dating and I'm going out with girls and I'm going to clubs and I'm getting booths and bottles because I started to think that was a purpose for me. I wanted to be the man, whatever that means. And so having the right people around you to guide you is super important. And it's super important to ask them those questions, right? Hey, how do you manage your money? If somebody tells you they don't, find another friend. Those are the things that I really regret. I'm not going to use the word regret. That's a lie. Those are the things that I wish I would have done different, but I have zero
Mm,
regret about what went down because I learned so fast and moved on.
mm. Moved here from Palestine?
So my grandmother was born in present day Palestine, in the before it was no longer considered the state.
Wow.
She was born there, and her family was actually very wealthy. But what happened when she was in about the fourth grade, when she was about 10 years old, her father, my great grandfather, he was the protector of the village. So what that means is at night, he would go around and he would basically make sure on his horse that there was nothing that would harm the village. And one day, his horse came back and he didn't. And they went to go look for him and he was stabbed and killed to death. And they brought him back. And then what occurs, though, back home at the time, unfortunately, is if he had brothers, which he did, none of that money goes to the wife. So they take everything and they left her with nothing with her kids, my grandma being one of them. My grandma had to go into an orphanage with her siblings. And back home as a woman, they literally taught her in the fourth grade how to cook and how to clean because that's what they were just expected to do. And my great grandmother would walk the cobblestone streets of Palestine with olive oil on her head selling to try and at least make some money. And that was my grandma's life for so long. My grandfather, he passed away, but early on in his life, he was very abusive and alcoholic towards my grandmother and the kids. And then she forgave him later. It was a whole thing before he passed. Like, thank God forgiveness was there at the end of it. But yeah, her life was not easy. That's the strongest human being I've ever met in my life. It's not even close. So, I'm not supposed to be here. And that's part of the reason I always feel the way I do about my past, because it's like, my ancestors put me in this position and here I am, was being a jackass and doing things I shouldn't have done. And sorry for the curse word. So,
Sorry, we're marked explicit for some
okay,
reason. I
good,
don't know
good.
what happened. What are some of your grandma's values? Like if you were to, like companies have core values, what would you say is some of hers?
Damn it, man. You're going to do this to me. She, uh, she has a mindset like no one you'll ever meet in your life. There is
Wow.
not a single thing you can tell this woman that affects or hurts her. There's not a single thing you can do to her that she can't get through. Her perseverance, her ability to make things work regardless of her circumstances. There's just so many things I can tell you. There's a story that my mom shared with me about her siblings, and my grandmother worked 3 jobs. They ended up moving to Toronto years later, and she was working 3 jobs because my grandfather was sitting on the couch and not doing anything, and he told her to go work. And she still would come home to cook and clean. And there was one night, it was New Year's Eve, and she was at her job at Big Boys. I'm sure you remember the Big Boys chains. Yep. She was working there as a restaurant,
Big voice.
and she wanted to make it back before New Year's Eve. So what she did is she literally got onto multiple buses, found a cab, and made it home at like 11:58. And my mom said she remembers her busting in the door right before the ball dropped just to be there with her kids, because there was never any excuses for her. And growing up, that was always the thing for me. I'll never forget when, like, I got kind of stung by a bee, and my grandma just walked over. I was young and I was crying, and she just like grabbed the bee with her bare hands and just like threw it on the floor, stepped on it, and she looked at me and she said, "You're stronger than that. You know that, right? It's just a bee." And I just looked
Wow.
at her. I was like, "Oh my God, what?" And I remember stopping crying, even though it hurt. And I just stopped. And she just kept telling me, "You'll figure it out." And even telling me to go and pursue the mortgage career was all her.
Amazing.
You meet her, man, like your life will change. She gives you a hug. She's the type of person that when you hug her, you just feel her soul. You feel everything about who she is as a person.
Well, you think some of
That's
that has to be, she's lived this unbelievable experience of life and bringing that. And now here we are talking about it. It's amazing culture. What about this Batman and Robin? For those that are listening on the Culture Runners podcast, go on the YouTube and watch the video. There's a Batman and Robin poster. It says "Be a hero" behind you. What's the symbolism behind that?
Yeah. So
Love that picture.
my whole life has been angels and demons. I'm actually very tatted up with angels and demons
Wow.
everywhere. My whole body.
Wow.
This is a huge angel and demon fight. My ribs are done. My chest is done. I have a yin and a yang on my ribs, and one's an angel, one's a demon, and in the middle is a heart. And that's my heart. Because I haven't always
Wow.
been the best. I haven't always been, the worst. So I've always been in this constant battle, like I feel like a lot of people are. And so for me, it's that reminder to be a hero, right? I have children now, and they do look up to me. And so, even being at Fuse, I had a huge conference. Fuse is an event that is thrown on by a company that I run, which he introduced, called AIM, the Association of Independent Mortgage Experts. And even at that event, the drinking, making sure I wasn't doing that, sticking to one cocktail, getting myself out of rooms as quickly as humanly possible. I have to be a hero. But the difference is you need things around you all the time to always remind you of what that means. Obviously, Batman and Robin, I'm huge fans. And the Robin honestly symbolizes that person that you always need in your corner no matter what. The other side of it, in my basement, I have a Superman poster and I have a Joker right next to each other, because I feel like all of us have that side for the Joker. And it's
Huh.
always that constant battle that we have to try and be the hero in our lives. So that's what that poster symbolizes to me.
I love it because I'm Robin. That's my whole purpose in life.
You're the man.
Yeah, dude. Like this is so symbolic. What is the Association of Independent Mortgage Experts, and why is that valuable for those that are in the industry to conceptualize in the industry of the mortgage and real estate?
Yeah, we focus heavy on mortgage brokers. We're an association with over 20,000 members. Recently, I took over January of this year through our
Wow.
first conference over the weekend, and it was an absolute blast. We got some of the best feedback we've received. The Facebook pages are blowing up. And the big thing for us is one, when it comes to having a circle of positivity around you, you need other people that are in the trenches with you, holding you accountable and pushing you forward. Number two, we're providing excellent training materials, scripting, role playing, sales calls. Number three, it's a massive community that we build different infrastructures for. So we have the WMN, which is the Women's Mortgage Network. We have a VA Advancement Committee. We have so many different committees to keep giving back, because for mortgage brokers, the biggest difference that I've seen coming from retail, which is where I started at, which is Quicken Loan / Rocket Mortgage, over to here, is sometimes you're left on your own little island. And
Hmm.
so our job is to make that island and fill it with a bunch of different people. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of the big thing for us. We're flying people into this island all the time to keep giving you value and helping other brokers close more loans, and in turn, help consumers get into their home with what we believe is the best option for them, working with a mortgage broker.
For those that are in the have transitioned from retail to brokerage, what are some of the ways they sabotage without even being aware? Because there's
Transitioning,
a transition, yeah.
yeah, from the retail to the wholesale side. So some of the things that they struggle with, is that kind of what you're diving
Or they
into?
might be doing that or sabotage because it's a different context, it's a different way of building, I
Look,
think.
I
You
wouldn't
know.
say, I don't want to use the word sabotage, right? Because retail still holds 74% of the market share. So they're doing things there that are obviously working to have 74%. The thing for me is this: when retail can't do a loan, what do? They broker it out. And that's just the reality of it. And so what that means is they're not using their own direct lender. They're using a lot of different institutions to get that loans closed, which is called brokering the loan. So we're mortgage brokers. And for us, that's a big deal, as why we believe consumers win best with the mortgage broker. And so I think what you're going to see a lot of here over the next 5 to 7 years is you're going to start seeing more and more people shift into the broker space. We're at 26% market share. So that means 1 out of 4 people are using a mortgage broker right now. And in 2014, it was roughly 14% market share. And so you're seeing a lot of the advancements. And what we have is, and we're cheaper across the board. There's data that comes out. And the reason why is we don't have to run on these higher margins. And what that is basically what the investors pay us to do a loan. We
Hmm.
have regulations as to what we can charge consumers, and it's less than almost any other publicly traded retail company. If you look at their margins, which you can find it with inside of their earnings reports, we're cheaper than any other publicly traded mortgage company, and you can prove that. Very easy to look up.
Hmm. I want to. So there's a clear value there. Then, if for one that's relating to consumers, I'll rephrase what I meant by sabotage. Or what I mean is, like, let's say one's transitioning from one way of doing business, and now they're a broker. Are there things they should be aware of how to be the most successful they can be in that new model
Yeah,
for their business growth?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
maybe
So
blind spots that they would have because if they came from one way of doing it.
absolutely. I think the biggest blind spot that you see is with all the products that we have come different guidelines. So, for example, everybody knows about your standard mortgage, conventional loan. You can put, 5% down, 20% down. Some have private mortgage insurance called PMI, some don't. But there's also some specialty products, things that are called debt service credit ratio. Those are called DSCR. These are great loans for investors. And basically, based off the down payment of a home, you have the ability to get into that home based off of the rents that you believe you can charge on that home every single year or every single month. So those products have different guidelines compared to the other regular traditional loans. And so it's very important that you read the guidelines and you go through them with a fine-tooth comb. And that's what we're finding is one of the biggest areas of opportunity when you're transitioning over, because they feel like it's standard and normal and they get the standard documentation. So
Hmm.
making sure you do your due diligence, don't just throw things against the wall to make sure they stick. It's very important that you actually dive in and understand the guidelines of what you're putting together for your consumer.
Hmm. You I was watching one of your interviews with dang, I don't he was a realtor, I don't remember.
Matt Talbot.
Okay, there you go. It was awesome. Great show. You're killing it. And you were talking about family checks in on you. And in your philosophy is you want to check in on your people and your people to check in on each other. There was like morning text, like when you wake up. Can you unpack that philosophy?
Yeah, yeah. So
The yeah, that
so this is
was
my
cool. It was in that's culture. I want to understand this.
yeah. So
One way of doing things.
I got back into, so I stepped out of producing. So what I mean is I stopped writing mortgages for a little bit so I can scale my company. Well, I picked the worst time because it was just after COVID and rates started to skyrocket up. And so you really, my leadership needed to stay inside of production. And unfortunately, that's an area that I missed and it's an opportunity that occurred. So I got back into a producing role April of last year. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this my way. I'm going to start with a team of 3. So I interviewed a bunch of people and I picked 3 specific people. And I said, look, this time around, I'm not here to negotiate with you. I'm here to basically say, when I say jump, I'm looking for you to say how high. And if that's not going to work for you, I want you to know it's totally okay. But at the end of the day, that's just the type of people I'm looking for right now because I believe I can help grow and scale this. Found my 3 people, and now it's turned into almost 20 people a little over a
Wow.
year later. We're doing roughly 100 loans a month with these 18 people that we have now. But one of the things that we said is specific precedents. For me, engaging with each other is a non-negotiable. So we had a lot of non-negotiables. One of those non-negotiables is we started a group text. As simple as that sounds, you can leverage this more than you could possibly imagine. Inside of that group text now, all of us are there always commenting, engaging, and pumping each other up. If one posts on social media, we all post on social media. If one
Wow.
of us screws up, we all screw up. But one of the things that we implemented is a very quick check-in strategy. So I'll send a good morning text at 5 in the morning. It's usually when I start my day, 5:30. I'll send that good morning text. They know they reply good morning once they're up. Why do they do that? Because I want to know when you're waking up. And that's an accountability play. That's not like, oh, shame on you. You woke up late. That's simply, hey, you're starting your day at 10 o'clock. What's going on? Are you okay? That's a problem. But what happens is the team buys into this culture of what we do. The other thing that we have as a non negotiable is we have to do a give back once a month. No questions asked. We give back. It's set up for you, it's structured. You show up and you give back to this community. That's a huge ordeal for us. So we have so many non negotiables built in place. And now it's created an incredible culture where people have each other's back. They love coming into the office. They love talking to each other. They love growing and winning with one another. And we're finding success like you wouldn't believe.
Do you have a horse?
No. A horse?
Yeah, yeah, because I'm laughing because um yeah, you said it was your great grandfather on your mother's
Yeah,
side. He had the horse.
he had the horse. Yes.
Yeah, you're the protector of the village.
You're the man, bro. I didn't. Yeah.
I'm just paying attention, dude. You're the
You're
culture.
the man. I never even thought of that in my life.
It's profound. It's like
I've never put that together. Can
a
I
lot of
leave
energy.
a horse?
And I watch your videos when you do these awesome videos of like when an upcoming event is coming. And yeah, you when you do these videos, it's like I could see you on a horse in the next event. Like those videos you do where you're in the
Yes.
bathtub falling and all these.
Yes.
What's been the response of those videos, by the way? I think they're
You're
very
you
creative.
got me speechless right now over that comment. That was really incredible. Way to pick up on that. I've never picked up on that in my life, and that's a really cool thing that you said, and I really appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, God bless you, brother.
Yeah.
That
Thank you. God bless you too,
it's
man.
your story. It's profound in a lot of ways.
You're putting it together really nicely. That's insane. So the videos have been incredible reception. I think it opens up a side of humility for people. I've had my head down running for 11 years. And so what I
Wow.
mean is literally just focused uh, on a goal, on a mission, wasn't really posting crazy stuff all the time. I was just so busy. But coming into the new role I had, people want to see you a lot more. And I do enjoy having fun. I'm not a always serious human being. I love to kick back. I love doing stuff like that. And so I think for people, one, it's having them see me get out of my comfort zone. And I think it allows them to get out of theirs. And it's like what I
Mm.
talked about earlier. It's giving others permission to do the same thing, right? There might be somebody out there that's sitting there, oh gosh, I wish I can do this. I wish I can do that. And they're not doing it because they have excuses one way or the other, but then they see me do it and they also see the behind the scenes of how we do it, because we like to put in the B-roll into the actual clip, and they can see like I make mistakes. We send out the bloopers. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes. Who cares? But the video reception have been huge. People want more of them. They absolutely love them, and we keep giving it to the people. So that's always a really fun thing to do.
Do you think it helps with like the intimidation that could come with, all right,
Yeah,
new
I think
leadership?
so. I think so. I'm a, I'm not a small guy by any means. I'm 6'2", about 250 pounds. So I'm a big boy, and I've learned to use my presence. I never understood presence until I was about 26 years old. So,
Wow.
about 7 years ago now. And you have to be very cautious with your presence. That's why the smiling's so important for me. That was something my mom used to yell at me at all the time. She's like, "You look like you're gonna rip somebody's head off all the time." And had to get
Wow.
that whole energy. And I do believe it really cuts that tension with people when they see me smiling and walking in. And I saw your video. That was so
Yeah.
cool. And it does. It helped a lot, especially over the weekend. There were so many people that were thanking me and reaching out.
What advice do you have for younger, successful, intense entrepreneurs that are having a harder time getting credibility, like, or getting opportunity from, part of this is projection, being young, it's not been easy to get the doors to open. What have you learned in that process? What's worked for you?
You need to sit down, put your phone away, get in the most comfortable mood you can. I don't care if I don't care if you're using sense. I don't care if you're meditating. And you need to write down and talk out loud about the person you want to be in 5 years. And what
Mm.
I mean is everything. What are you wearing? What do you look like? How much weight did you lose? How much muscle have you gained? What do you eat every single day? What are you doing every single day? And you can paint that picture. You'd be surprised. For me, and my business partner will tell you, he gave me the biggest hug. We landed a few hours ago. And he's like, "Gosh, I remember when you showed me and told me that you were going to be on a stage one day." And I
Wow.
told him that 4 years ago, and it was cool. We got emotional talking about it, but he gave me the biggest hug because I told him. And tell somebody you're going to do it. Tell somebody that you can trust. Right? There's so many people that, oh, this guy's an idiot. Everybody here has one person they trust. Tell them. And I told him, I said, "Doug, here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's what I'm going to be wearing. I don't know where it's going to happen. I just know this is what I want." And he gave me the biggest hug today when we got off that plane. And that's what I would recommend to anybody. As frustrating as it gets, you want that instant gratification. I understand it. I want it too. I promise you. But you need to paint the image of who you believe you truly will be in 5 years. And the second you do it, you'll be surprised how your actions line up because you think about what you wrote down every day. And that is what I do. It's been
Wow.
the coolest thing ever. And I got goosebumps right now. You can see it.
Yeah. Wow. Uh, what about work? Like, what's your philosophy on work ethic and like how to build? You said your head was down for a long time and you were just what, focused on your business. What did that look like?
Yeah. So look, early on, I was focused on my business and going out and partying. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. I didn't have a sense of purpose. I didn't understand, I was naturally good at what I did. I'm not going to lie to you. I could fly by the seat of my pants. I
It
could
was
shoot
innate.
prepared, and I was good at it. And that was early on. And I was making,
Wow.
I could say it, right? It's okay. I assume early on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would probably be very motivating to people that
So
might not be where they want to be.
by the time I was 22 years old, I never made less than $300,000 a year at
Wow.
22. And I could do it in my sleep. I was that good at it. I didn't have to
Wow.
work a lot. I mean, I worked a lot because I enjoyed what I did, but I didn't have to practice a lot. And what a waste, of that potential ability, because I thought I should be going out and I thought I should be partying and mixing and mingling and dating. And I still get frustrated about it. And again, I'm not going to use the word regret because now I get to teach my kids about, how to pass through this. And so that's a huge ordeal. And then after that, it's like when my mentor died, he passed away 6 years
Oh,
ago
wow.
from stage 4 stomach cancer. I've never taken this bracelet off. I bought 100 of them when he passed. They're upstairs. I will die with this. They will bury me with this bracelet. And I'll never forget just looking up and feeling so ashamed. This guy that was worth God knows how much, so much money poured into this kid that, has is immigrant parents, first generation. And I'm sitting there looking up and he passed. And I'm like, oh my God, how can I let you down? That's all I kept saying to myself. What a awful human being I am if I let you down. I'm so sorry for doing this. And after that, that was it. I mean, that was truly it. And the rest of it's history. Um,
You got more disciplined or impulse control?
yes, impulse control.
Man, we're so similar. It's crazy.
I was diagnosed early on with so bipolar. So I was diagnosed with manic bipolar, right? So it wasn't like the Jekyll and
So you
Hyde.
have superpowers.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's the fact, bro. Churchill, Robert Lowell, Plath, Kennedy. I think Alexander the Great, although there's some Nietzsche. I can go on. Foucault. Uh, did I say Churchill?
yeah, you did.
Yeah, he just always like comes back. Oh, Bill Clinton, believe it or not, one of the
Oh, I didn't
best
know
books
that.
I've ever read is called In Search of Bill Clinton. And it's about his brain. Unbelievable. John D. Ventnor, who invented DNA, also.
I didn't know that, man.
Yeah. I try to study all these different minds, and it's pretty unbelievable. That's why I said superpowers. It's like, yeah.
I learned it later. I learned I used to use it as a crutch, and then I learned how to control it. They put me on medication, and I hated the medication. I hated it. It made me just such a mute. And after a year of the meds, I called my doctor. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. He's like, well, we can wean you off. I said, I'm not weaning. I'm cutting cold turkey. And so I cut cold turkey. And the difference this time around was whenever I had the impulse, I now understood what it was. Before, I thought that was what everybody experienced. I honestly thought like everybody felt the way I felt.
Alexander Hamilton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He wrote most of the Federalist Papers, I think like 54 of them or something.
I didn't know that, man.
Yeah, they didn't have medication. So he could just write the Federalist Papers. I'm just saying. I mean,
Have you ever dealt with anything like that?
I mean, I know some unbelievable. Well, my when you were talking about like your grandmother, my biological mother's mother and husband sounded very similar to what you were just explaining with it was your mom's mom. Yeah, your mom's mom and her husband.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just I've had to get, I'm blessed to attract superhuman people around me. So
You have a superpower
and
yourself, it sounds like.
well, thanks. I appreciate that. I love that you're honest because like or open and honest. The I think people could I want your feedback on thoughts on this. People stigmatize that or like what they don't understand. And if more people would speak up about it, I think it would help a lot of people.
I
Like
think that's
my biological mother, I was in foster care because she ran into a police department, thought the mafia was chasing her. She had a schizophrenic episode. So they took me from her, put me in foster care, and she fought to try to get better. But when she was in her late 20s, she was in a car accident and it triggered bipolar and schizophrenia. And
oh,
yeah, so like I was raised by Barbara, episode 242. Shout out to mom. She raised me. She took me in at 51 years old. And so I had anyway, so yeah, I'm very close to that.
thank you for
Um,
sharing that.
yeah. And it's led to study being very interested in the topic. And I found there's all these unbelievable people that have changed the world that their narrative was not the norm. Gandhi, even I was just reading something about it, very strong argument for his he and being manic.
I read Lincoln's Melancholy, one of
Oh
your
yeah,
recommendations.
Lincoln.
Even
Yeah, yeah,
Lincoln, you can see the mania in the book with the letters that he wrote. And that was, I texted you actually about it. I did
yeah.
text and I said, I wish school would have taught me real history because I went through school. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was not hard for me. And I was like like I didn't understand why I felt the way I felt. And then you're hearing about all these people, you learn about Lincoln and Honest Abe and Never Tell a Lie and chopping down trees. And they brought him into I'll never forget, they bring him into school and I'm like, God, like, is everybody just normal people? Why do I feel this way internally? Like, why do I feel so bored? Why do I feel so upset? Why do I feel so like sad all the time? And I wish I would have learned, like reading that book, I was on the plane. I'll never forget listening to it to LA. And I'm sitting there just like teary eyed, hearing some of the way he felt about situations
Wow.
and not taught, he lost a woman that he thought he loved and it went to like his best friend and she ended up marrying his best friend and he even like wrote letters about it. And I'm just like, oh my God, I wish I would have learned this. And that's also partly shame on me for not reading and, taking that opportunity, but that's not something I understood. So I
Wow.
wish we taught history the right way. I really do.
Um. Oh yeah, I wanted to. So what for those that are listening that they have had ups and downs. Like they resonate with this part of the conversation.
Yeah.
What would be how have you been able to focus and create so much value um leveraging this?
Yeah. So the first thing is
Whereas like my mother, for example, right? I lost her, right? She fought and she was in my life for about 5 years and eventually didn't. I don't know what I mean. I have to. Where are you there, Mom? I have to find her to find out. But like based on the literature that I got, it looked like she wasn't listening to a podcast like this. She didn't become a mortgage like leader and sales champion. It was more of she was a nurse, which is great. But um I'd love, if somebody's listening to this that can relate to where what you've been through, like, what's your advice to them? How did you actually get away from demons and angels? It's very, I want to know, how'd you do it?
so the first thing is, I'm one of the fortunate ones that have the ability to control it. There's people out there that don't have the ability to turn the switch off. And those people, I sympathize for. I really do. And I don't use that word often, but I also understand chemical imbalances just because being a part of it in my life. And so those are the ones I sympathize. But there are a lot out there that do have the ability, but feel like they're lost and trapped. And those are the ones that I hope to help. We just had Ed Milet come speak on Friday at Fuse, and he absolutely brought the house down. But one of the things he said is he was talking about his father, who was an alcoholic, and he said, "You're the best person to teach somebody about what you've dealt with." And he was basically saying his dad helped so many others recover from alcoholism. He helped over 1,000 people recover from
Wow.
alcoholism and break the habit. And so I believe that I'm that person as well. So I really love talking about and sharing it. One of the biggest things is understanding the mania for me. So my wife knows, and my wife is very understanding. And I told her early in our relationship because I'm like, look, you have to understand how I operate. It's not on purpose. I just can't do anything about it. So when I'm very manic and it's high level of mania, she knows I work. And that means like I'll just work until 4 in the morning sometimes. Sometimes I won't sleep for 2, 3 days. Just living off that high. And I've learned to work. My therapist is the one that helped me early on. Dr. Rebecca McLean, actually, believe it or not. We were talking like early on about it. And this is way back. And she said to me, well, I was like, Doc, and I'm depressed. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. She goes, well, if you're up, why don't you just work? Looked at her. I said, huh? She said, just go to
Love
your
it.
computer and work. If you just can't go to bed. I said, "Oh, okay." It was the best advice I ever received. As silly as that sounds, because my mind now wasn't, woe is me. I can't believe this. Why, God? Why can't I sleep? Why are you doing this to me? That's what I used to do.
Andrew Carnegie, that was one that didn't
Oh
come to
yeah, Andrew.
mind.
He's great.
That was another one. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I didn't.
'Cause now I'm thinking, because yeah, like he probably just never went to bed and just literally built Carnegie Steel.
I love your brain, dude.
There was another guy.
Your mind can't like it's crazy. Like
Never turns off. No, it never turns
you
off.
build you literally pulled your mom's episode out. Do you have a photographic memory?
No, everything I do is based on emotion.
So you just it just
I
comes to
can
the forefront.
I can hear thought. I can't really explain. It's ineffable, but it's more like I can hear thoughts. That's why I get so much from these interviews. I can feel what's not being thought that's influencing thoughts. I can't really explain it. I've been
No,
trying to
I
write
promise
write
you it
through
makes
it.
it no, it makes sense, man. I don't
So it's all through emotion and passion. It's my wife's more literal and
yeah.
like logical. Everything's through emotion and energy.
Me too. I mean, from a different sense, obviously, than the way you have it. Yours is like, you feel it in the back of your head and it just comes to life. As soon as it pops up, I could feel it through the honestly through the camera right now. It's pretty insane just watching you do it. I'm not kidding.
No,
It's
thank you. I
insane.
appreciate it. Yeah.
I hear it fast, just the numbers are coming out fast. I'm watching your eyes move. I'm watching you think, and it is so impressive, man.
I
It's wild.
appreciate that. Yeah, well, man, I knew, and I saw you on stage. I was like, this guy we need this in the industry.
Thank you.
And you just started speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I did stuff in retail, like in front of the LOs and trainings and stuff, but like in terms of keynotes, yeah, that's
Wow.
very all new to
What
me.
advice do you have for those that have a desire in doing that and not being just a complete sweaty mess?
Yep. So the first time I ever public spoke, I shook and walked off stage.
No way. I
Yep.
really didn't think that.
Nope. I was 22 years old. I was in retail. It was and it was objections. So we basically had to overcome objections, and I was shaking in the microphone in my hand, and then it actually goes back. It's a core memory. I can tell you where it came from. So for me, I'll never forget where I screwed up, and it was 10th grade. I forgot the teacher's name, but I remember it was a project that we had to do on a president, and I was like, I won't get picked today, whatever. So I'm telling my friend I won't get picked today. The teacher heard me and she had me go first, and I couldn't get anything out at all, and I was so embarrassed, and that's where it stemmed from, and I knew where it came from. So that was the good thing, is I was able to bring it back. So I was able to fix it and work on it. But after it happened the second time, I literally told myself after I got off, I said, I will never allow this to happen to me again, ever. And so I started studying, and my nerves used to still be crazy, and I used to sweat and be so nervous. But I started looking up tips and tricks. So like number one was like always have water with you, because if you take a sip of water, no one's ever going to think it's awkward, and that way you can buy yourself time. So that was one trick. So you'll always see
Oh,
me on
that's
stage.
smart.
I'll always have water. Number two, if it's an audience, I always tell people based off where they're sitting. So obviously you can see where people are sitting. So beforehand, I look for friendly faces from like the left, the middle, and the right. And I say, hey, if I need you and I look over, can you just make sure you're smiling for me? It'll really help me. And so I started like having people that are in the audience
Wow.
known, obviously. And then whenever I get nervous, I just kind of look at them, and it give me a quick little ability to just kind of come back to reality on who I'm talking to. And then number three, Renee Rodriguez taught me this, which I loved so
Yeah,
much.
shout out to Renee. He's been on the show. Great episode.
He's amazing, man. And he taught me about a target audience. He said, John, whenever you get on stage, what is your target audience? You're not presenting for you. You're presenting for somebody specific. Just remember who that person is specifically. Just imagine that that's the only person you're talking to. And so those are the three little steps that have helped
Wow.
tremendously. And then also the other thing is, as painful as it is, watch yourself. Watch yourself and critique. And I know you're going to hate it. You're not going to like your voice, and you're going to give every excuse in the book as to why you don't do it. You're too busy. You're too this.
Mm.
If you truly want to master something, you need to lean into that pain and film yourself. And when you go through practices, practice like you're truly on stage. Do not go through the motions. It is such a waste of your time to just go through the motions. Practice in front of your spouse, your friends. Hey, I really need you for a second. Can you just take me seriously for 30 minutes? I really need you to critique me on this. It's really important to me. Please don't laugh about it. It's so important, because so many people will say, well, my friends will joke or make fun of me. They won't if you set the tone. And because if they're your real friends, guess what? My real friends don't joke around when I tell them I need their help.
Wow. Do you have you ever done any monologues yet?
No. I did. I mean, I did my keynote Friday, and that or
You ever
yes,
take an acting class?
no,
You ever heard of Michael Lasso?
no.
He's a guest of the show. He would love you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What was your keynote on?
So yesterday I did my first official keynote in front of a massive audience
Wow.
and brought the house down. We got a standing ovation. It felt amazing. I actually got super teary-eyed and cried backstage. That's what I manifested, just so you know. I told my business partner that, years ago. It's something I told him. I see it, I see a crowd, I see this happening, and it was such a surreal, beautiful moment. But I talked about just the new changes and the progression to the mortgage industry, and I had a lot of fun, and I made them laugh. And we talked about the stats and why we believe brokers are the best place for a consumer. We rebranded our organization. So before we used to go by brokers are better. We now go by brokers are best. I kind of did a Superman thing and ripped my shirt off.
Wow.
There's a clip going around, but even when that happened, I had a button up and I forgot to undo the cufflinks. And so I'm sitting there stuck with the cufflinks down and they're laughing. And instead of panicking, I just ripped them off like this.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
everyone loved it. They all started cheering. It was like a wardrobe malfunction, but even that couple of years ago would have made me so like nervous and freaked
Oh
out.
yeah, that
But
would have
instead, I just looked up at the stage and I said, in my head, I go, wait, you know what to do. Like, you know exactly what to do right now. And it was such a surreal moment. It was probably one of the calmest I've ever been in my life.
how mentors have been a big part of your career development. What
Biggest.
advice would you give on how to honor a mentor while you have them and you're working with them?
You need, so here's my, he passed away. That's who he was, Stephen Luigi
Wow.
Piazza.
It's on a coin, huh?
Yep. Yeah,
Wow.
Stephen Luigi Piazza.
Oh, you talked about him at the event I saw you speak.
Yes, that's the guy, the best human being ever, ever. It's not even close, man. This guy is not, he's not real. He was not, damn it, dude.
It's the Culture Matters podcast, brother. You're in the right place.
I just miss him. That's all. I miss him a lot. That's it, man. Just, you always want somebody. It's I finally have, I've now gotten more people. I have Renee. God, I love him so much. Renee's been
Yeah.
so big, but it's been so long since I've had somebody like a Renee. And
Mm.
I've been figuring out so much stuff on my own. And that's not a bad thing. I think I needed that, the self-reflection. And I think I needed to do my own studying and my own reading, similar to you, just reading and understanding life and people were really important to me. But having somebody that pours into you is more important than you could imagine. And here's my advice I'll give. If you are looking for someone to mentor you, number one, they're everywhere. I promise you can find them. The biggest thing that I see where people struggle is they don't execute. So if you get a mentor, you do what they say. You need to do it. You don't just get to pretend to do it. You don't just get to say, yeah, I'll get on that, because you're wasting their time. And so it's on you if you don't execute. And so you can't be mad if they don't pour into you, because that upsets me personally now, because I do mentor a lot of people and I get frustrated when they don't do what I, when I tell them to do and I check in. You said you want to be great. You said you want to do this, yet you couldn't complete a simple task.
You just reminded me of something right now.
Yeah.
Save my ass. I appreciate you. I just had a real.
Yes, sir.
What's your other? Yeah, no, because
Oh,
yeah, I mean, mentors is everything. Do what they ask you to do, and sometimes it's subtle, and you don't even know if they really asked you. But I just had a realization
you ever
that
read the
I
48
got to.
Laws of Power?
Yeah, Robert Greene. That one. There's a lot of content in that book.
So the 48 Laws of Power, I always tell people I look at things differently. There's people that look at the 48 Laws of Power as an ability to manipulate. And for me, I look at the 48 Laws of Power as an ability to learn and understand how other human beings operate. And one of the laws is, right, it's talking about like don't upset thy master, right? And
Never outshine the
never
master.
outsign the master. Yep.
Well, it's so where I was going to say something. That was the only one that came to my mind.
Listen, man, I feel it. I'm just telling you,
Yeah,
Jay,
that's
I
crazy.
feel you
Wow.
from this. I feel you through this camera, brother. I'm not even, I have goosebumps again right now. I feel you through this camera,
You ever
dude.
see Step Brothers?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen Step Brothers.
Yo, dude. And like we're like 45 days apart too. So I thought
You're
that was in
91?
August. Yeah, you're August 25th.
Yeah,
I'm July 9th. So
that's
good.
crazy.
This is recorded forever. People could see like, oh, that's what Jonathan and Jay became buddies. Like,
That's so sweet,
it's
man.
on here. Yeah, man.
I felt that, man. I felt it, and you're so badass, dude. It's really cool to actually get to talk to you more like
Appreciate
this.
it.
I know we've been texting and we were able to chat briefly, and I saw you so dialed in, taking notes the whole time. I watched you the whole time, dude. I'm not even, you were on when I was on stage, you were on the left side, right in the front,
Yeah,
literally
you have a
just
good
taking
memory.
notes left and right the whole time. And
Yeah, well, preparation's taken me to the next level.
do you learn from is that how you learn? Is it easier for you? Are you more visual? Are you more like auditory? Is it everything for you? Like, how do you absorb information so quickly?
I don't know. I've been searching for the answer to these questions. It helps me a couple things, but one big one is not interrupt the medium.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, like because I can come in like a tsunami or a fire, like how fire comes in and burns the whole forest down. So conditioning myself to take notes helps me see the whole chessboard and not knock all the pieces over.
I visualize it in my head. Like it's like a whole roadmap in my head. That's how I see
Wow.
things. That's the only way I see things. And it's mind blowing. And I've been like that since I was a kid.
So number one on the mentor thing for a second,
Yeah.
do what they say.
Yeah.
What was your second piece of advice?
So it was part of the outshine the master. And people read it and they have negative connotations towards it when you read it, but they talk about, two stories. And one of the stories is the horse breeder, and the king comes down and basically, hey, I want you to teach me how to do this. Nope, I'll do it for you, kind of thing. And then instead the king ends up killing him, right? Because he won't teach him and he's got the best horses, and now the king's upset and he outshined it. And then the other one was, I believe it was Galileo was the story, and he went down and visited this king, and he had his telescopes with him, and he showed him and he said, "King, that's your star. That's your star. This is for you." And even though, Galileo, it's pretty mind-blowing, obviously, but he basically gave him everything he wanted that night, right? He had the food that he wanted. He had everything that he wanted, a nice place to stay. And simply by what, right? Showing the star over there. For me, that story, obviously, Robert Greene tells both perspectives, right? Like why the opposite ends of each of it. But for me, reading that story, it is a lot about mentorship, and it is a lot about how people pour into you. Galileo's excitement to tell that person about the star is how I am towards my mentors. I'm so excited to tell them about why pouring into me is so important and why it means so much to me.
Hmm.
And so I think that's a really big deal, where the other side of mentorship, people sometimes go dark and they go rogue. And I've seen it happen, right? They want to outshine their mentor. And we've seen it happen in our industry. Oh, yeah, this person helped me early on, and then screw them. Like I outgrew them. Like, are you sure you outgrew them? And
Wow.
there's ways to get through that stuff by having actual conversations. You see it in our industry, unfortunately, way too much. And so I think that's the second tip for me, is be very excited about it. Really appreciate the fact that they're doing it, and don't ever lose sight of it. Always have perspective. Even if there's a potential falling out, there's a way to have a conversation about what's going on. And that to me is the two most important things when it comes to
Mm.
mentorship.
Tough conversations. What's worked for you to have those?
I've gotten much better at them over the years. I think up front, not I think that's terrible. I know up front that I was awful at them. It's just not how I grew up. My family, that's just not something we did growing up. You held your emotions in, and I think that's just part of my culture. My dad, he didn't have an easy life growing up. My grandfather, I never met him. He passed away before I died. And a fascinating story. So I have the same name as my grandfather's tradition. I went and saw his grave on my birthday, and it's just so surreal to see your name in the ground. Um, it's really, really mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
In '86, and so for me, it's just so important, man. It's just a whole crazy situation about conflict for us. And even my dad just wasn't a thing. You weren't allowed to talk about the emotions, right? Like, hey, dad, I have anxiety. What are you talking about? You have a roof over your head. I had to do XYZ. All right, you're right. My bad. Hey, I grew up in a mud hut. Yep. Sorry about that. You're right. I got a roof over my head. And so I had to learn a lot early on, and I had people holding me accountable. What you learn about tough conversations is it helps you avoid the gray area. Renee talks about the narrative gap a lot. And the narrative gap is basically the way, somebody can love you and somebody can hate you at the same time. And they have one person that loves you has a different narrative versus the person that hates you has a different narrative. And so for conflict, having those conversations helps you bring that narrative gap to one specific area. And that to me is super important, because if you really want somebody to know how you feel, you have to have that conversation, even if it doesn't end well, which a lot of them don't end well, right? The point of the matter is at least you got your point across. And the other piece of it is you have to learn how to go through life having those conversations, because people, like if you have kids, you're going to have to teach them how to do that. And so there's so much that goes into confrontation and conflict. It's actually one of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's one of my
You like that book?
it's one of my favorite books. Peter Lencioni.
Yeah.
Favorite books of all time. And that first layer is trust, is a huge piece of it. And then part of the other layers is conflict. So conflict, healthy conflict, is the ability to talk about whatever the goal is and have that direct conversation with somebody else. So there's so much that goes into conflict. But yeah, that's one of my favorite leadership books of all time.
Have you met Patrick yet?
No, never.
Would you want to?
Yeah.
I just I don't know. I'm just curious. Like,
Oh, I thought
if
you
you're gonna
knew.
make that happen. Well,
I
I'd
was like,
like to
yeah.
as well. That's why I was asking. Yeah, like he's someone I have to on the list that I gotta ask to come on the show.
Mhm.
You ever meet Steve Sims? He was just on the show recently.
No.
Great book, I recommend. Just read it. Go Start Stupid. And the big takeaway for me was he's been on twice, episode 11, and then recently it's coming out soon. Start Stupid. It was he would just basically make things happen. He could get anything to happen. And then he did some due diligence to figure out like how was he actually able to do all these unbelievable events for customers. And the feedback was, well, no one ever asked. Just the most profound. You just seem like a guy that would get that.
I
No
haven't.
one ever asked.
No.
So have you asked Patrick to meet?
No, I haven't, man. That's why it's
Yeah,
funny that you say that, man. It's
I'm projecting because I haven't. So I was like, oh, Jonathan.
do you have you do you ask a lot? Like when you want something like that, do you actually go out and ask a lot? Do you
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
kind of person you
yeah,
are?
yeah, yeah. It's just the blind spot is, I think the blind spot is that it could very easily not be a thing that's happening daily. Because if something, every time we level up from in a paradigm, as a in a paradigm, that's our new paradigm. That's our new ceiling that we put on ourselves below awareness. Like our habit. Like there's a degree of comfort, and then there's enough. Like you were talking about conflict, and there's enough things to react to from a conflict standpoint as we live in the gap.
Can I ask you something?
Of course, yeah.
All right, finish that thought, and I
No,
want
no, that thought's never finished. I'm like pulling.
to.
Yeah, dude. Like the answer is yes. However, I also want to say no because if it's not and then it makes me think philosophically. Like once you reach a paradigm, then you hit the new. You get right. You break through a certain ceiling. Now that's your new floor. So I think the most aware, honest answer would be no, because it's not like there's a regular ritual where I'm breaking through the ceiling to have that as my new floor. So like if I said to you, yeah, every week I reach out to people for the show that are far beyond my current paradigm, then I think my answer would be the yes.
Got it.
But no, I think I'm lazy and entitled and not courageous enough, and I need to re-listen to this episode, taking your advice, right? And look to where, because I'm asking you about Pat, that you're like, wait, do you know him? I'm like, no, I'm asking you because I should be reaching out to
Yeah. You're such a legend. That
yeah,
was
like
I
so.
just saw you come full circle. on that. I just saw you analyze that
Yeah, it
whole
was a bunch of
situation on
BS.
the
That's
fly.
what a lot of this is, right? Like when we're projecting.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, it's crazy. Like
That's why I
that's
try to own
awesome.
I. Like when I sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, no,
As Churchill would say, don't interrupt me while I'm interrupting.
no. Jeez.
um, like content. I see you doing videos on Instagram, right? You're sharing information. When I do that, I always remind myself to speak in these to own the subject because I want to make sure that I'm aware that I'm oftentimes talking about myself as opposed to just saying, it's everything that I'm talking about. It's like, no, I'm working through this stuff. I try to own it as much as I can. So
W- can I ask you a question?
yeah, yeah.
I have two questions, if that's okay. My first question is, what I want to use the word frustrates, but what's something that you see in people that is something they can fix and it slightly, bothers you knowing they're not making those changes? Like what's something that frustrates you, I guess would be the word, or irritates you about people sometimes when you're talking to them and you're seeing they're not living up to their full potential?
I don't concern myself too much in others.
What frustrates you within yourself then?
Yeah, when I don't believe I'm being understood, that's deeply frustrating.
When you don't believe that you're being understood by the other person you're speaking to. Is
Yeah.
that it? Okay. Do you spend a lot of time trying to continue to dissect and make things more layman terms for people a lot? Is that, do you find
No,
yourself?
I'm really, I don't think I'm good at that. Although I think I have been improved. I've been working on speaking more clearly when I do speak. Like I know picked up on that when you earlier in the conversation when you were really eloquently articulating mortgage and whatnot. Like uh in certain, I've started to speak more clearly. Like whereas sometimes I won't do that whatsoever. And like so. Oh, and I also want to answer the beginning of your question. It a lot of the frustration can belie me. I don't know if that works. If there's like a circumstance by which I believe another could have, I believe they could be following their conscience in that context, and yet they aren't. Like they have the information, the information is accessible to them. They've even practiced, and then it's never easy to watch a student fail a test when you put a for me it's not easy to watch a student fail a class that I know they care about. you know I believe that they care about the class. We've worked really deeply on the studying, and I've given it my all to teach the class, and like they're an A student. Why did they get a D? So I that is frustrating. I do the best I can not to let the impulse to teach, which is like the desire to actualize things in myself, project on the student to where like I'm controlling their narrative. Like, they have to get an A because now I'm making it too much about me.
No, so I was going to ask you. I have questions for you. I didn't know how this podcast was going to go, but I was very interested. Just if it's okay, just to be very real.
Well, I think we should do another one and would be more conversational, if anything. Would
I,
you
I
be willing to come back?
I would love to come back, but I need you to answer
I'm
one
invited
for me if
anytime.
that's okay,
Oh,
please.
hell yeah. I love being asked questions.
Um, do you? So I believe that as I go through my journey of life, I built up so many walls as I went through life. And I remember I have a very, very unique memory, and I'm able to put myself back very far, very far. When I mean back, I mean, I can close my eyes and remember everything I was wearing, where I was sitting, what I was doing. It's a gift and a curse, and I've learned to love it and I've learned to embrace it because I truly can go anywhere in my head. And it's a beautiful thing now that I'm getting older into my life. But going through my life, I built so many walls and barriers, and it was protections, right? I didn't want to talk about feelings or emotions or anxiety or things I screwed up, right? Like going out to the clubs and partying and doing the things I shouldn't have done. I used to have these walls up. I feel like, as a kid, you have the John Locke theory, which is the clean slate theory. And it's like everybody starts good and the world kind of takes over. And I do believe in that to an extent. You have the book?
Yeah, yeah, it's right over there.
Oh, that's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, John. Yeah, an essay on human understanding, which I've not finished, but Locke, yeah, man, empiricist. Yeah,
That's crazy. So
yeah,
so
you're a beast. You like Locke?
yeah,
Locke.
I'm a
We
believer.
could do that on part two or
Yeah,
part
I'm
three.
down, man. And I'm a believer in it. And
Man,
so for me, what I'm curious about is I feel like my healing now is my ability to be this honest with people because I don't care anymore. And when I say I don't care, it's that I don't care what people are thinking. You know,
wow.
you don't want me to fine, whatever. I don't this is who I am. I'm not going to live my life lying. Do you believe that that is a potential purpose of life is you're going to go through this life, the walls are going to get built, and then as you age and go through it, I feel like our job is to unwind those walls before we turn, 70, 80, 90, because you hear it a lot. People regret, I wish I didn't hold on to this grudge. I wish I didn't, I wish I let this go. I wish I was closer to my family. Is that a belief for you that that's part of our journey as people is to unwind what we've done and get us back closer to where we were?
I am working on that. Like meaning I'm so I don't know about people, but I don't want just this platform to be in vain, right? Culture matters. So there's individual hero's journey of the hero right there. Individual journey. There's family, blood, non-blood, family, interpersonal relationships, um, community, work relationships. So to answer and the general being a citizen, to answer your question, I'm at least doing my best to work on that within my awareness. Um, that would be my answer, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure out maybe the bigger answers about humanity and psychology. Like, are you a fan of or a follower of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I
Yeah,
am.
like he's been on that quest since he did his dissertation on alcoholism, having struggled with alcohol. I didn't know that he actually struggled with alcohol until I watched and I've been studying for years, his interview with the Graham. It's like the ice coffee hour. I really recommend that one if you like him and others that are listening. I didn't know that he was unable to do his thesis and party. And he just chose at 27 not to drink. And then it was like at 50, he's tried it again. He's like, I'm not going to accomplish my goal with it. So he's pursuing these big ideas, and I'm doing the best I can to do it in my own way, and working firstly on myself, as he would say, clean your room. Which there's a couple of things I could be cleaning in this office. That would be my answer. I think I'm doing my best to do that for myself. So I don't want to build a platform that could easily lead me to not put my house in order, not have my house in order.
It makes sense. And, I think
That's why I had my mom on the show. Episode 242. I said, Barbara, you're coming on like every time I see you. We were not close for a long time because of me, not her. So I've worked on that, and I've had help. My wife and other loving, great our client partners they're my guardian angels. So yeah, I've always felt like Humpty Dumpty, and there's some more shells being put back together, right? Shells being put back together. One great podcast at a time, one speech at a time, one uncomfortable conversation with somebody that I care about, that we might be in the gap, as you and Renee would articulate it. Um, that's my answer.
I love your answer. And I think, next time, maybe not on this one, I'd love to. I mean, honestly, if you have time, I'd like to keep even going down it, but I'd like to talk to you about, you said earlier, you said, I'm not too concerning with other people, right? It's more so about, how I'm feeling at that time. You kind of dissect yourself. You're not really dissecting others. But I think one of the cool things that I'd love to talk to you about is I think you do help others move forward in the right direction because there is a specific way that you should go through life. And I do believe there's a way to do it. How it occurs is different for every human being, and that's a fair statement. But there's opportunities for people to really progress themselves forward. Even though there's a lot of evil people in this world, right? And there's people that don't have that chance. The majority of people do, and you're seeing it each and every single day as life continues to progress forward. And I just feel like there's opportunities for you to continue to propel others. And I'd love to even go down that path and those conversations.
let's do it. What would you, um, there is a way to go through life, progress oneself and others forward. Um, you come back next time and we'll talk about that philosophy. How about that?
Yes, sir.
That'd be amazing. Hey, in closing for our audience,
Yeah.
what do you want them to do? One thing right now.
The one thing I'd tell you to do, and I mean this, look in the mirror, have a piece of paper with you, and write down all your demons. Stop lying about your demons. Stop. Stop. I've been there. Drinker, womanizer, partier, impulsive spender, not a good brother, not a good son. Been there. And I'm not gonna lie about it to anybody. Because when you have to lie about it, you lose control. You really lose control because you can't have an honest conversation with somebody. And you can never be trusted if you can't have an honest conversation with somebody. No one will ever trust you. And so just sit down and do it. Look in that mirror and start writing down. Write down all the things that you know are your demons, and you know what they are. You know your vices. Don't pretend like you don't. You know what you have to work on. And that's the one thing I tell people to do immediately.
If you're listening to this episode of the Culture Matters podcast, where the heck could they follow you? One place.
Honestly, Instagram be great.
Yeah. What's your Instagram handle?
It's Jonathon_Haddad is my Instagram handle.
Jonathon,
Haddad.
Jonathon Haddad _Haddad HADDAD. Follow, hit follow, re-listen to this episode maybe 3 times because we can go in many directions. You better get that repeat going and leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, brother. God bless you guys.